What is up, everyone? This is Gary A. Swaby, and I am here today on the Snowfall Aftermath. We will be recapping Snowfall Season 6, Episode 6, and the title of the episode is Concrete Jungle. And I am joined by Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. How are you doing today, Richard?
Doing pretty good, Gary. What's up, listeners and viewers?
Yeah, what's up indeed? So, wow, I don't even know how to start this one. Like, what an episode. This is a moment happens in this episode that we kind of we've been predicting it for a while now, but it happened, and even though it was predictable, somehow it still shook the soul. Like it shook the culture, like for real. And I've been reading all the discussion and stuff that people were saying about what happened in this episode, and yeah, this is going to be one that's remembered for a long time to come. Like, especially the performance of this character, Jerome, um, outstanding. Like throughout the whole series, he's been A plus. Like his performance as that character, like so yeah, it's official. Uncle Jerome, he's no more. He got taken out in tonight's episode, and this leaves us with so much to talk about because this was an intense episode all around. Like there's just so much to unpack here. So I don't want to delay too much. We're gonna get right into our takeaways in a sec, but please do, hit that like button. It is very important. If you do enjoy this content and you want to see more of it, please do hit that like button. Also, leave your comments for us. Like, I want to see a lot of comments on this episode because I want to see what people are feeling, about this. I want to hear all the theories. We're going to be asking some important questions later as well about the events of this episode, and I want the people to chime in and answer some of these questions too, because this is a big deal, So definitely do leave your comments and also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, all that good stuff. The Powercast is also coming later on, so look out for that if you are into Power and you're going to be watching tonight. But yeah, so let's get right to the takeaways because there is so much to get to here. So this week, Richard has the honor of going first with the takeaways. So take it away, Rich.
All right, first and foremost, I have to say this was an outstanding episode of Snowfall. Amin Joseph, who plays Uncle Jerome, I really do hope that this guy gets an Emmy nomination for this role because he did a fantastic job, not just in this episode, but consistently throughout the entire time he's been on this show. You can really see the character grow with each season. And then, of course, he finally reached his breaking point last week. So we knew that this was coming sooner or later. I also will add in very briefly that he did an interview with ABC News a couple of days ago. And when they asked him in that interview how he would describe this final season of Snowfall, he said fans are going to have their hearts ripped out. Now, he retweeted that last night before this episode aired. So that was a bit of a warning to let fans know something might be happening to his character. But he also did mention in that interview he is going to be directing episode 608. So I look forward to seeing that, to seeing what he brings to that episode. But I just wanted to make sure I started off this takeaway by saying yes, he did a fantastic job, and by far this was one of the best episodes of Snowfall that I've seen in quite a while. The show was good consistently, but this episode stood out because of everything that happened, all the tension, so on and so forth. So I'm going to get into my three quick takeaways from this episode. Uh, I'm going to come back to Louie and Jerome, and first I'm going to go to some of the other points in this episode. Now, Teddy, obviously, let's start with him. After what happened last week with his father getting killed, the question was going to be how Teddy would retaliate. And in this episode, at the start of the episode, he does contact his ex-wife Julia and warns her that her and his son Paul are in trouble. So he arranges to have them moved. Now, that's the only time we see this character in this particular episode. So I'm assuming that we're going to see her again, and she's in the trailer for next week. So we'll definitely see her, meet up with Teddy once again next week. So I look forward to that. But after that happens, we do see that Teddy decides to confront Rueben at his house. And basically, that acts as a warning to Rueben to basically let him know, I want to see if we can work this out another way before things get violent. And of course, he does tell him that obviously his place is under surveillance. And he does make the comment to him that, yes, now is the time to walk away. If you don't walk away and I see you again, the next time I see you, I will kill you. So that pretty much sets the tone for these two characters to have the showdown that we know is going to happen at some point in the future. And then the last point I will make about Teddy is he does talk to Parissa in this episode. And we know that a couple episodes ago, Parissa gave him the idea of just skipping town and disappearing. So he actually tells her that he definitely would do that now. He would consider giving it all up and going away with her. Now, I will say this. I don't have any sympathy for the Teddy character. I know there are some people that may have some sympathy for this character, but he's done so many horrible things in the show. It's like none of the characters on the show really are good people. They've all done bad things, which makes them flawed characters. But I'm not expecting this guy to have a happy ending. I'm also not expecting Franklin to have a happy ending, and I'll get into that in a little while. But I don't think anybody on this show is going to have a happy ending after what we witnessed last night. Because again, every crime, every bad thing that somebody has done, it eventually comes back on them one way or another. And that was an example of what we saw last night. So moving on from the Teddy takeaway, I'm going to go on to Franklin in this episode. Now, we do find out also at the beginning of this episode, the aftermath of Franklin killing Teddy's father last week. Basically, you have this sequence where Veronique and Cassandra are having a conversation. The conversation we saw last week that was in the trailer, where she basically is trying to convince Veronique it's time to leave him behind. And she already has passports ready for both of them to skip town and leave Franklin behind. Interestingly enough, Veronique stands by her man. And I will say for now, because I believe that that may change in the future. Again, shout out to Inga71. She does not trust the character. I understand why you don't trust the character, but I kind of feel like some stuff that Cassandra said about Franklin is true, which is that he's going to continue to unravel as these episodes continue. And of course, we already know that he's probably not going to get that money back. So things are going to continue to get worse for Franklin, I think, from here on out. But again, I do feel as though it was important for us to see the Veronique character stand by Franklin. Now, one important thing that I do want to mention, though, is Cassandra, obviously, she decides to stay behind. She doesn't get back on the plane with them to go back to LA. So it makes me wonder if this character will become a problem later because of all the information that she knows. We do know that when Teddy makes the call to when he's calling Julia, his ex, his boss does tell him that they are searching the place that was burned down where his father was at. So I'm pretty much thinking that they put that in there to basically say it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to eventually find out who was at that facility. And if they happen to find out that Cassandra is still there, well, maybe she also could be used against Franklin because, again, she doesn't want Franklin around her daughter. So I would stay tuned for that. I don't think the character is just going to be gone and that's it. The character has a motivation now to come after Franklin, even though Veronique made the decision to stay with Franklin. I think he should be concerned about her as well moving forward, but we shall see what happens as far as that's concerned. Now, when Franklin does get back, he does tell Sissy that she should stay home, that Leon and Wanda, they can stay there and protect her. And he says that they cannot go to the shelter. They just need to stay, they just got to stay put where they're at. Now, on today's show, my name is Sissy's security personnel because later in this episode, we clearly saw that Leon and Wanda were back in the projects, and I thought to myself, I thought their job was to protect Sissy, and they wasn't there. So I guess I'm just letting you know that I was there watching over her in that particular scene. Maybe they made a little mistake. We got the schedule a little confused, but I was there. But in all seriousness, though, Sissy definitely needs to be protected. I kind of feel like she is in a vulnerable position, as is every character on this show. For her specifically, because she is adamant that she's not afraid of Teddy and she will stay there and she doesn't have a problem fighting if it comes to that. So I look forward to seeing what happens, because that is going to happen at some point. I mean, I imagine it is. And finally, the last thing about Franklin that I will say is he does meet up with Gustavo in this episode. That was a very interesting discussion that they had, because pretty much he tells Gustavo that he'll give him 1 million in passports if he can deliver Teddy to him. Now, Gustavo tells him that he will do this, but Franklin has to promise that he's going to kill Teddy, because he does not want any of this to blow back on him after he betrays Teddy. Now, this is interesting because if you recall, when Franklin met up with Rueben for the very first time, he told Rueben, "I want Teddy alive." Now Gustavo is telling him, "You need to kill Teddy." So I can't wait to see what happens after this, because clearly, I think we all know that Franklin is at some point going to kill Teddy. Because again, Gustavo tells him after you get whatever information you need from him, you need to kill him. But things are not going to work out exactly the way you think they are. And I still think that Gustavo is in trouble. Obviously, the DEA, we do see briefly, the DEA is yelling at him in this episode and basically telling him that they will put him in jail. They don't care about the KGB. So he's still in a tough situation. But he looks at Franklin as the only one that can get him out of the situation now. So I look forward to seeing how all of that comes together, because again, there's still a lot of things they have to tie up as the season comes to an end. And finally, the final takeaway for tonight is just about, once again, we have to talk about Louie and Jerome in this episode. Just a fantastic performance by Armin Joseph, as well as I believe it's Amanda Lewis. They did a fantastic job in this episode. We do see, again, going based off of what happened last week, Jerome does come home drunk, because obviously he still has all this stuff on his mind, dealing with all the stuff that's happened up to this point. He does tell Louie that he's leaving for Jamaica, but that conversation they had, both the conversation they had that night and then the next morning, that was just very well done, because it gave you context. It gave the character a reason to understand the perspective of Louie and vice versa. And he basically tells her he's tired of doing all this stuff. The money's not worth it. And then Louie tells you that she thought that she would be happy having the money and the power in the respect. But the problem is that Jerome is seen as the main one that does all the deals. People want to talk to him. They don't want to deal with her like she will want. So as a result of that, this explains why whenever she was so adamant last season about getting her hands on Bucky, and basically trying to Buckley, basically getting her attention, basically getting him on her side and controlling him and owning him. This explains why she wanted that power. Because again, even though she has the money, the control, she doesn't have the power. She doesn't look at herself as being the one that's in full control, because Jerome is there. So I think that conversation was needed, because again, everything up to this point she's been doing is for self-worth. She wants to establish her own self-worth. So they have that conversation. He does tell her that he's still going to leave, but he does tell her that he's going to basically go meet up with Scully and do a deal and give her time to just, think through some things. And of course, she decides to go to the horse stables where Kane's people are at. And they take her, they kidnap her, they beat her. They are attempting to rape her. They do bring in a pimp. So pretty much Louie's past comes full circle in a sense, because of all the stuff that she did prior to getting involved with the drug game. And we do see that as she is tied up there, eventually Kane does call Franklin, tells him to stop by. And then when Franklin gets there and he sees her in this state, he's telling her to just give up whatever information they need, tell her where the cop is at, the ex-cop is at, and just Just go on and pray for a quick death. Of course, what happens is she does tell her, she tells him that she's not going to work with them, but she does offer Franklin the opportunity to, hey, do you want to get Teddy? I'll help you get Teddy. And then Franklin turns her down and says, nah, I'm good. I already have my own plan to take care of Teddy. That was very cold, but very well deserved. Okay. But as he is leaving, because again, he was taught very well by Sissy, he has a change of heart, and then he tries to contact Jerome and Leon to tell them, hey, we need to rescue Louie. So I want to say everything that happened after this point, everything was already excellent in the episode, but everything that happened after this point was just on another level, because you see they come together. Obviously, they have a plan. You know, when Franklin comes back and then he has Jerome get out the trunk of the car, and then you see them basically side by side shooting up all these bad guys. I thought that was fantastic. That was great. As a fan, I'm happy to see that happen. But then, of course, we get to the scene where finally Jerome gets into the room where Kane is at. He has Louie. He's about ready to shoot Louie, and then Jerome decides, no, we're not. I put it all on the line, so we're going to go out this way. And him and Kane get into a violent shootout. So this is how Jerome dies. Now, obviously, my assumption is that Kane is dead as well, because, yeah, they both should be dead after that. But he does die right there. Louie is screaming, crying. And then Franklin comes back. When Franklin comes in there, the reaction Franklin has, not really believing that he's dead, unk. Just excellent acting all around. Damson Idris, very emotional. It made you feel the scene. And again, it emphasizes again, they've been with these characters for over 6 years now. So as somebody who's watched the show from the very beginning, you are emotionally invested with these characters, and they made you feel every single moment of that when this character got killed and everything leading up to it. So again, fantastic episode. I can't wait to see what happens. I know some people are going to need some time to process, because yes, it's very sad for a lot of folks, but things like this have to happen for the storyline to move forward. So excellent episode. And I look forward to seeing what happens next week.
Thank you very much. Yeah, excellent takeaways. Excellent breakdown of what happened at the end there. I'm also going to get into that too, but I do want to mention that what you said about Cassandra, that's a great point. Because I didn't even think about that, but I could totally see them, catching up with Cassandra and her maybe selling out Franklin. But so yeah, that was a good point to make. But yeah, so let me get right into our takeaways. So then, after that, we can get to our questions and discussions and have more of a back and forth dialogue. But so my takeaways. So let me start here. So I think it was very like I said, this whole episode was intense throughout. You said it too. Every piece of this episode, you just felt the weight of it. Like everything felt significant. And seeing Teddy come face to face with Rueben for the first time, and the two characters talking, engaging in dialogue, having a face-off, kind of, it's like before you get the boxing match, you get like the face-off where the two fighters come face to face, they weigh and everything like that. This felt like that. It's like the moment the two characters meet and interact before everything hits the fan. And I like one thing. Teddy as a character, I do want to see him get his comeuppance. I want to see him, pay for what he's done. But one thing I like about the character is just how menacing he can be. Like, without doing a lot. He can look completely calm, but at the same time, he's like a ticking time bomb. He has this presence about him where it can pop off at any time. Like he can take out someone at any moment. So you get that feeling like, and we're not used to seeing Ruben kind of, you know, under pressure or looking anxious and stuff, because it seems like he's in control a lot of the time. We see what he did to Arvi in the last season and everything. Like he seems like a man that's well composed, who knows what he's doing, who's very in control. But this scene, it looked like it caught him off guard. You know, it's like Teddy's presence just, it was just overwhelming. You know, and it's like, wow, like these two, you know, menaces come face to face now, and it's like, yeah, I want to see what's going to happen here, because you know Teddy's not going to go down. You know, he's not going to let this guy just take everything away from him, you know, and expose him. And you know, at the same time, Ruben's with the KGB, and you know, their whole thing is they want to take down, you know, Teddy, and expose everything he's doing, and the CIA and stuff. So yeah, like that was incredible to see, because now there's so many different ways this can go, because we also have the conflict with Franklin and Teddy. So it's like, you know, that is like the main kind of showdown that we're waiting to see. But you also have this Ruben situation on top of it, and it's like, you know, it's starting to feel like this show is just full of titans now. It's like, you know, it's a bunch of titans, and we're just waiting to see, you know, which one is gonna be the last one standing, kind of thing, you know. So I really liked seeing that scene. And you know, it just showed the boldness of Teddy, because even though Franklin kind of got a one up on him, he's still very much in control of things. Like he's very capable, you know, of pulling things off. So I want to see how that whole situation with Ruben is going to play off from here. Because yeah, that could go so many ways, and I do believe that somehow Franklin will be the wild card here. He's gonna, you know, depending what he does, is gonna impact this situation with Ruben. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So the next thing is, you know, I'm going straight to Louis and Jerome here. So there's so much to unpack, you know, with that. So at the top of the episode, when you know, Jerome finally came home, and they had all of this, you know, important dialogue between them, you know, and Louis' thing was kind of like, and you spoke a bit about this, Rich. So like, she has the money, she has the power, but she doesn't have the respect. You know, there's that song "Money, Power, Respect" by Lil Kim, DMX, and all them. Money, power, respect. So she feels like she has the money, she has the power, but she never got the respect, because like we saw it in the last episode, where Dion, you know, he comes to the club to talk to them about what happened with Leon, and he really wants to talk to Jerome. You know, he doesn't really want to talk to Louis, and she feels like it's been that way the whole time, because the streets respect Jerome, you know, but with her, it's like, I guess they don't take her as serious, and a lot of that is because, you know, obviously she's a woman, you know, and we know how, when it comes to the streets and, you know, masculinity and being aggressive and things, we respect physicality in the streets, you know. So and you know, men are the ones that, you know, they're really aggressive in that way. um but women have their own other strengths, you know. But so she feels like she's not really being respected in the way she should be in the streets. And you know, even Jerome even questions her on that. He's like, so all of that is enough for this death, for this blood, like just for you to feel like you're getting your respect, all of that is enough, like that, is it all for that, you know? And I like that he did check her on that. But at the same time, I kind of understand her position, because she made a bold move in the last season, where she kind of took over, you know, Franklin's whole business and everything, and cut him out. That was a bold move for her. And she thought that, you know, that was going to solidify her, and that, you know, there was going to be no more debate and no more deliberation. She thought she would run everything at that point, you know. So she wants that respect. She wants to feel that respect for herself. And of course, she knows, you know, they're a married couple, so I think she knows that Jerome is kind of halfway in, halfway out. She probably knows that he's having, these feelings about leaving the streets behind. So she wants to, she wants the streets to respect her in the way they respect him, because if he decides to step away, she's gonna feel so lost without him. So, that was a great dynamic to see. And then when she does get kidnapped, um, they kind of play into that because at first she looks a bit shook, she looks a bit scared when Kane is roughing her up. But in the later scenes, when Franklin's there and Kane's branding her, and then the scene with the pimp, we start to see that she shows a bit of strength and a bit of boldness, and she's solid as a rock. She's not giving up Buckley, no matter how much they torture her, she's not telling them where he is, so she's standing on her square, and she's accepting her consequences. So she kind of does earn a little bit of respect in that way. But then, we see what happens later, and we've heard the lines in the trailer. So she's looking a bit questionable, a little shaky now. But you know, this was a great Jerome and Louis episode, and it had to be because it's the last hurrah for Jerome. And yeah, so I guess my third takeaway kind of speaks to Franklin's role in this as well, because I feel like he did a phenomenal job in this episode, like the way he Damson Idris played the character, because like there's so many layers to it, because it's like he has to act a certain way because he's been through so much, like in this show, like the experiences he's had is kind of hardened him and made him a rock to where he it's hard for him to show any emotion. Like he and sometimes he literally can't show emotion, but you can see it like in the acting still, that you see those moments where he's having a moment of vulnerability or a moment of emotion, kind of. You see those moments with it reflected in Damson Idris's acting, and that shined a lot in this episode, where just the way he came into the warehouse when Kane invited him, and he saw Louie and everything, and he tried. Obviously, he was trying to play along, like, oh, the, I don't care about her or whatever. He was trying to play that role, but at the same time, you could see the gears ticking in his head, and he knows that it's his uncle, it's his blood, essentially, it's his uncle's wife, and he wanted to give his uncle that chance to save his wife. So as he's driving away, you see it. Of course, when he spoke to Louis, he was cold, like you mentioned, Rich. He said, just give up Buckley, otherwise they're going to torture you, and then the whole thing with Teddy, where she offered to give up Teddy, and he was like, sorry, I already got a lead on that. He did have that cold moment, and it did look like, because he could have easily just walked away, act like he didn't see anything, and they would have killed Louis, and Jerome would have known nothing. Like he wouldn't have known Franklin was even there. So he could have did that, but he had that moment of, you know, no matter what happened between me and Uncle Jerome, he's blood. He is Sissy's brother. We're all family. So he had to give him that fighting chance to save his wife. And I respect him for that. That he had that realization, and then later on, he assists his uncle. They form the Avengers and everything, and they roll up in there. They kill. They basically wipe out the whole gang, which was like, it was very well done. It didn't feel rushed. It felt very well done. Like, because sometimes in shows it feels like, oh, these are the main characters, so they're overpowered. But it felt like they actually had some, like, tactical nature about it, of how they did it. So that was good to see. And of course, Kane's people kind of trust Franklin at this point, especially with what happened with the shootout before, where they shot up Kane's house or Kane's girlfriend's house or whatever. I think they kind of trust him after that. So that was reflected in the way he just walked up in there and popped off, you know. And then yeah, so when the whole thing with Jerome happens, and then you know, just even Franklin's reaction was like that just sealed the deal. That just sealed that scene, like where he was like, Unk. You know, he didn't overdo it. He didn't do. He could have easily did the overacting and broke down, but just the way he did it was perfect because it showed how much he's been through. And it's like, you know, we've been through all this, and now he's gone, and he's just like, Unk. And then, you know, he sits down, he sheds a tear, and, you know, Louis screaming over Jerome. Like, it was just all perfect, like perfect poetry, in my opinion. And, you know, all the actors did a great job. And it was an amazing send off for the character. Um, and yeah, I think there was something else I wanted to say, but I can't quite remember. But yeah, I'll I'll remember it when we do the discussion. But yeah, this was amazing, and I just loved how the part that Franklin played in this whole thing. I feel like you know they pulled it off perfectly, and then you know the whole dynamic with Jerome and Louis leading up to the death was very well done. And overall, this is a perfect episode for me. Like just the way it went from start to finish, like just yeah, everything was perfect. Like they kept the intensity throughout. Like, you know, from the start you felt like there was something major coming, and they just kept that suspense and tension throughout the entire episode. And then, you know, by the time you get to the halfway mark and you're just super engrossed, like and you know it just goes by so quick after that, you know, like it's like wow, we're already at the end. But yeah, they it's just perfect. Like it was a perfect episode, perfect send off, and big shouts to you know the actor. What is it? Amin Joseph or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Amin Joseph. Yeah, big shouts to him because you know we were talking before this episode, you and I, Rich, and he just embodied this character like throughout the whole series. Like he made this character like it's yeah, he brought this character to life and made it real. And you know, Rich was even sending me the music video that he did, like where
Yeah,
he was rapping in character.
yeah.
And yeah, like to me, Jerome is real. He's a real dude. Like he's a real character, you know. So we lost a real one today, but that shows you that this really is the final season, you know, and this is going to be something that's remembered. Like I think this moment in particular is going to be one of the defining moments of this show. Like, you know, like how in The Wire, you know, when Omar dies, like it's so out there, like how it happened, but you always remember that moment. Like years after, that's one of those standout moments that you remember. Same thing with Stringer Bell, you know. This is like that moment for this show. Jerome dying. Like this signifies the change, this signifies the end. So yeah, and oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I I really almost like I basically shed a tear like at that moment as well when Franklin was like Unc. Like yeah,
Yeah.
I felt the emotion like in my chest. I was like, wow, like it's crazy. So
You had him and you had Leon too. Leon, the expression on Leon's face, yeah, it definitely make you emotional.
yeah, yeah. So for a show to
Yeah.
do that, like that shows you the level of writing because it takes a lot to get me to that point. But yeah, they did it with this, so I give them
I
props on that.
I agree 100%. One other quick thing I want to mention real fast. I like the parallel of this of pretty much what they did for Kane's character because I don't know if you noticed this. I'm pretty sure the fans will notice this though. If the character is dead, which I believe he is dead, they introduced him last season, episode 6. That's when we actually saw him. So that's a pretty damn good parallel. You introduce him the previous season, episode 6, and then he dies in episode 6 the next season. That I think was pretty well done.
Oh yeah, like the way it feels like everything is so like meticulously put together in this show. It's like, wow, you know they know what they're doing. But yeah, that's amazing, and like it feels like the character's been in the show for a while now. I forgot that he actually debuted last season. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, incredible. But that's my takeaways. Let's get to our questions and discussions. Please do leave your comments, people. If you're listening, let us know what you think. And hit the like button. That's very important. And subscribe and hit the bell also. But let's get to our questions and discussions because yeah, so much to say here. Um, so which question? There's two juicy questions here. Which one should I get to first? Um, okay, I'm gonna get to the big one first because this is what everyone's talking about. In the trailer we heard those lines. Louie is still she's blaming Franklin, for the whole thing. It sounds like, and all day I've been seeing, in the Facebook discussion groups that we're in, and on Twitter I've been seeing people talking about the same thing. You know, whose fault was this? Was it Louis's fault or was it Franklin's fault? And we need to. I think we kind of have a consensus here between me and Rich, but we need to discuss it still because it's very important. So Richard, what's your thoughts on this question? Whose fault is the death of Jerome?
Well, this is 100% Louie's fault because she is the one that decided a long time ago she wanted to get retaliation on Kane, so on and so forth, to try to take him out. When Kane did those hits to try to scare the family and take each character out, he was unsuccessful. And then Leon had a conversation with him. They tried to make him, try to change the narrative. They said that we'll cut you in, set you up with money, making money with selling drugs, etc., so on and so forth. And Leon had told Louis that that was all set. No, don't need to worry about that. But Louis, obviously, she wanted revenge, retaliation, so she decided to go down this path. And the end result is it ended up getting Jerome killed. Now, I will say this: when I made the comment earlier about her, all of this, she looks at Buckley as someone who she can control. And I thought it was very interesting how when Jerome paged him in this episode, this guy was getting high. So that is a call back to what happened in the previous episode where he told him to stay off that stuff, that he's a junkie, so on and so forth, because when he was needed, he wasn't there. But as a viewer, I know people are asking, why is Louis fighting so hard to protect this guy, to not give him up to Kane? It's because that was the one individual where she felt she can control, and basically he'll do whatever she needs him to do. That's what this was all about, because she didn't really have it. Like you said earlier, Gary, she didn't really have the respect because Jerome was the one that was talking to all the people during these deals. So she felt as though she had the upper hand in this situation with him. So she wanted to try to get as much out of him as possible. And of course, when it came to this point, you saw what ended up happening. She still wouldn't give up the information. So when they show the trailer for next week and she says Franklin is to blame. Now, Franklin obviously he did reveal some information to them about, he was the one that told Kane Louis was the one that pretty much set up this hit against him. But again, all of this started because Louis wanted to be the one to make a stance in the beginning. So at the end of the day, I believe that Louis is to blame. I think that Louis is the kind of individual who, when she does something wrong, she refuses to take accountability for her actions. And we can say the same about Franklin as well, right? Because, like I said earlier, even though we're rooting for some of these characters, like obviously we want to see Franklin get revenge on Teddy. But if you think that Franklin is going to get revenge on Teddy and get his money back, I think you need to rethink that, because there will not be a happy ending for any of these characters. The fact that Leon has come back from Africa with Wanda, that story also will not have a happy ending, because again, there's not really, this is not a story that's supposed to have a happy ending. All of these characters have done some pretty bad things throughout the course of their time on the show. So at some point, fate does catch up to them, and some of that stuff might be returned one way or another. It's just a question of how it's going to happen. And as they've proven with this episode last night, it's all about the execution, because many of us knew that Jerome was going to die, but the question is, we asked us, how are they going to do it? I think they did a fantastic job showing you that in this episode, and it makes me very curious to see what happens next. But yeah, my to sum things up for me, I think Louie obviously is the one to blame with all of this, uh, and she refuses to acknowledge that. So I think when they show in that trailer of her telling people Franklin is to blame, one thing I do want to mention very briefly before I go to you is that I think that Franklin did make a mistake in this episode when Louis said, "Hey, I'll help you get Teddy," and he said, "No, I'm all set. I already have a plan." I think now when Teddy meets up with Louis again, Louis is going to tell him, "Hey, Franklin already has a plan to try to take you down." She doesn't know what the plan is, but I'm pretty sure she's going to throw some more gasoline to that fire between those two now, because she looks at Franklin as an enemy, even though he was the one that told Jerome, and hey, we need to rescue your wife. But she looks at him as an enemy. So I'm just telling people, stay tuned for that, because I saw online a lot of people saying they dislike the character, they wanted her to die instead. She will give you a reason to feel that way, I feel, in the next couple of weeks, if you don't already feel that. But we'll see what happens.
That is an excellent point. I didn't think of that either. Yeah, she like if she comes in contact with Teddy, she can now tell him Franklin, has a plan in mind. So that's a good point. Um, but yeah, as for the question, who is to blame? Like, see, I know this is a big topic online, and people are talking and debating and everything, but it's clear to see, it's clear, it's very clear to see whose fault this is. Louis from the last season has been pushing this whole thing with Kane. She set Kane up, you know, with and she didn't expect Kane to find out, but of course he did. And and she protected Buckley. Like she showed more loyalty to Buckley than to her husband, because you know in the previous episodes, she it's like she's not concerned about how Jerome might be feeling about this war with his nephew, and she's just putting these people against each other with no care in the world. Like she doesn't care that she's causing hurt within this family, with Sissy, Jerome and Franklin and everything. She doesn't seem to care about that. She just wants to go on her power trip. She just wants to, be in control. Like you said, she wants that control. And she led them both down this path, and Jerome showed his loyalty. He shows the love that he has for both Louis and his family. He's shown that again and again. And Franklin in this episode, he showed his loyalty. His loyalty came out. That's what made him slow down in the car and page Leon and make him, get in contact with Jerome and everything. Like that was his loyalty coming out. She has shown no loyalty because, even in the last episode, she was mad that Franklin didn't die, in the shootout. So, and she was bold enough to say that in front of Jerome, like, oh, this could have been all over, So it's her fault, it's that she got them into this mess. I do respect that she stood her ground and everything, especially with the pimp dude. She told him about himself and and all that. I respect that. That was a great comeback for her. But yeah, like just hearing her say all that in the trailer, it made me lose respect for the character again. And I completely understand what people were saying, where they think that she should have been the one to get taken out. Of course, it's way more impactful that it was Jerome, because he's such a real dude. Like he's such a real one. So it's a bigger impact for that character to get taken out. If Louis would have gone, it would have been a big moment, but it wouldn't have hit as hard, as Jerome. But but yeah, it's Louis' fault. You know, I want to hear some arguments against it being Louis' fault. You know, because I don't know how you can make an argument that it isn't. You know, of course Franklin does make mistakes, and we acknowledge them. He's blindly arrogant, and he has caused a lot of, like, uh, violence and killing to happen. You know, even just a few episodes ago, where what's her name, Black Diamond or whatever, where she got beaten up by Jerome. That
Yep.
was all because of his stupidity. You know, so he does do things wrong. You know, Franklin isn't perfect, but in this case, it was all Louis. You know, Louis is to blame for her husband getting killed. And yeah, I really want to see, because in the trailer, of course, they play tricks. So I don't know if it goes this way, but in the trailer, it looks like Sissy kind of, not checks her, but she's like, we're all kind of to blame. We all played a part in this. That's kind of like something she says in the trailer. Um, and I'm guessing she was speaking to Louis, maybe, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, like all of their actions led up to this, but Louis is the most responsible for Jerome's death because she should have been listening to her husband. She should have understood his feelings and everything. She should have known that this was a very uncomfortable position for him to be in. And yeah, she could have, like, they had the crown, they were in control, but she should have been smarter because there's more things that come with the crown than just, being in power. You have to be smart too. Like, you have to be smart, you have to understand how, you know people are playing out. You have to understand all the pieces on the board, like how this person's feeling, how that person's feeling, and how that might impact this thing. You have to see everything in total. You can't just be selfish and be on your personal arrogant, power trip. And yeah, she we see, and we see what happened with Buckley. Like, Buckley was in the car getting high in this episode. The person she was protecting, he's back being a fiend. So all of the you did all of this to protect him, and yeah, it's yeah, she messed up big time. And I actually can't wait to see the interaction between her and Franklin. Like, because I'm sure Franklin he must have a huge monologue in the tuck, ready for Louis to let off on Louis. So I can't wait for that conversation when we get that. But so staying with, this topic of Louis, so we did get, the moment where Franklin comes to the warehouse and Louis does make that offer to him of, she can uh she can help him get Teddy. She does make that offer. And we know that Franklin does have something with Gustavo set up. But, I still want to ask the question: was Louis being genuine in this moment? Did she really want to offer him that, or was she just trying to save her ass, basically? And this is a two-part question as well. So, did she mean it? But also, she could still actually help him later on with that. So, also let me know, do you think that maybe they'll reach a point where she actually does help him? So, two-part question.
Okay, this is a great two-part question. No, I don't think that she meant it when she said that because she was trying to get free. She was not worried about what Franklin said because we got to remember the last time that Franklin and Louis had an interaction last season, she said, "The next time I see you, I'm gonna kill you." And this is after Franklin pulled the gun on her because she would not help him out. So I kind of feel like at that moment she's thinking about, oh, I need to get free. I'll tell him whatever I need to tell him so I can get free. Then later she would have turned on him either way. That's what I feel, especially after seeing what she says in the trailer for next week. And as far as answering the question, do I think that she's going to help him eventually? I don't think so. Because here's the thing, Teddy now is in a bit of a vulnerable position as well because he feels the weight of all this stuff happening at the same time. Of course, He hasn't seen Louie again yet. I would imagine that in the next episode, they're probably going to meet up again, and then she'll give him an update as to what has happened. Because again, he is the one that caused all of this with stealing Franklin's money. He's the one that escalated this situation to where it is at right now. So I personally don't think that she is going to help Franklin. I think that she is going to find a way to hurt Franklin because of what she said. So that's why I said if she does meet up with Teddy next week, she's probably going to mention to Teddy, you need to watch out because Franklin might have some other help as far as this is concerned. Now, I will say this. I don't know if Teddy would still suspect Gustavo because they've already had that happen in this season where he met up with Gustavo. Gustavo told him the truth, and then that was it. I don't know if he would still suspect that Gustavo would turn on him. So we have to see what happens. But I will say this next week, the description for the episode next week, one of the sentences said, Gustavo runs out of time. So whatever that means, something will happen with Gustavo next week. Now, I don't know if that means that he is going to help Franklin or if the DEA is going to try to shut him down and arrest him, or if he's going to once again talk to Rueben. I mean, I have no idea. But to answer your question, though, Gary, no, Louie will not help Franklin. And when she said that she would help him, she was lying because she wanted to get free. That's just my opinion, but I'm very curious to hear what you and others think about that.
Sorry, I'm muted. So what was you asking if next week will be Gustavo's like
Oh
resolution or
no,
where?
oh no, yeah. The description for next week, the two
Mhm.
sentences that they have, one of them says that Franklin and I believe it's something to the effect of Teddy and Franklin, they take a step further in their pursuit of each other. Then the second sentence specifically said Gustavo runs out of time.
Right.
So I feel like he's going to have to make a critical decision in the next episode, whatever that is. And I don't know what's going to happen because I don't know. We do see in that trailer that Franklin is asking Leon for money as well. So clearly,
Oh
I
yeah.
want to see. I want to see what that's all about. But continue. But go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think he's running out of time too. Like I actually think from this moment on, we could even see a body drop every episode. So
Yep.
I definitely think Gustavo is in a lot of danger because he's the position he's in. Um, and my one of my questions was actually, do you think Gustavo is being sincere to Franklin? So I guess like going off of that, so like they had that deal, where he's gonna help him get Teddy, and Franklin is, in return he has to actually take out Teddy, and he was like, that this is the easiest promise I could ever make. Um, and yeah, I don't know with Gustavo. I feel like he is kind of being sincere to Franklin just because he does want this problem to go away. Um, with Teddy, and the only way to get that finality and that peace for his family is if Teddy goes away, because for as long as Teddy's around, he's going to have to help him, and that is going to leave him in this position that he's in where he's got DEA coming from one side and Ruben coming from another side and Teddy, and so the only way to get free of that is for Teddy to be taken out. um, and of course, they could still find him because there is the other CIA dude who knows about him and stuff. So he'll still be at risk, but I feel like it will be a bigger relief for Teddy to be taken out. Now, who do I think is going to catch up to Gustavo, and why he's running out of time next week? Um, yeah, I think it's going to be the DEA because he did make that phone call last week where he warned them to not do the raid on the warehouse. So that showed that he's still kind of in contact with them, and they're not just going to be sitting around doing nothing. They're still trying to proceed with their case. So I think that they're going to be putting a lot of pressure on him next week. I don't know if next week. Yeah, maybe he'll get taken out because what could happen is maybe the DEA catches up to him again, and maybe Teddy even sees this, and that is something that he didn't tell Teddy about. Like he told Teddy about Ruben, he didn't tell them about the DEA. So if Teddy were to see something like that, then he's gonna know that he can't trust him anymore. And they're getting to the critical point where they can't take any risks. So, he can't take any risks like that at all because he's got Ruben on one side, he's got Franklin on another. So that might be the time where Teddy decides, I'm cutting you loose, literally, because you're too much of a risk to me at this moment. So yeah, it could be something like that happens where, he's under so much pressure and Teddy sees what he's doing. So I think something like that could happen. What do you think of that?
I think that's very possible. One thing I do want to make a comment on, though, quick though, I 100% trust Gustavo instead of Louie as far as whether or not they're going to help Franklin. Because one thing that they did point out when Franklin and Gustavo spoke, Gustavo said he made mention of the fact that last season Franklin helped him out when he came back and helped Franklin. This is why he extended the courtesy to him to say, hey, I trust you, but you have to do this for me. You have to kill Teddy so he doesn't come after me and my family. So I think he definitely is going to attempt to help Franklin. The question is, however, though, is who is going to stop that from happening? And I think what you said about the DEA is very likely. We only saw them briefly in this episode, and it happened so quick because they had that shot when you hear when Franklin and Verona are obviously going into the plane and you hear the engine revving up. They had that scene of Gustavo's getting yelled at by the DEA agent. So clearly, they didn't really emphasize them that much in this episode. But I definitely feel like next week is do or die time as far as Gustavo making a choice. I find it interesting how Ruben has not once again he hasn't met up with Gustavo yet, and he is the also somebody who said I'm gonna give you 24 hours to give up some information, and he never did any of that. So that's why I said next week, obviously that should be a focal point within some of the storylines that they do tell. Now that Jerome is no longer here, there's going to be a funeral. We know that much because we've already seen that in the trailers. But outside of that, the stuff with Gustavo, that has to, at some point, he has to make a decision as far as what he's going to do. Um, but I definitely think the DEA, again, like you said, Teddy does not know that he's been talking to the DEA. He knew that he was talking to Ruben, but he did not know about the DEA. So I'm very curious to see what happens next week. And the last point that I will make on this particular topic, when we did see Louie doing these deals and she was meeting up giving product, she was also meeting up giving product to Gustavo. So if she meets up with Gustavo a second time, if there is any hint of the fact that Gustavo might be helping Franklin, again, all this information she can feed to Teddy. So that's why I said I'm very curious to see what happens because I think that, again, when Franklin told Louis briefly, I have a plan, I really do think she's going to use that information and try to suggest to Teddy, you need to watch out because Franklin has something else that is brewing for him. But again, we'll see because we haven't seen her interact with Teddy yet again. So I'm curious to see what the interaction is going to be like when they actually do meet up again for another time this season. But stay tuned.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's another great point. If she does meet up with Gustavo, and she catches wind of something, yeah, excellent point. Yeah, and also Ruben, that's another thing because we didn't see him talk to Ruben again. Yeah, so that's another thing that could come back because Ruben gave him 24 hours, and it's probably been like 72 hours by now or something like that. So, so like, yeah,
We need to talk about that. What is Ruben doing? Is he just waiting for somebody to make a move? Because it feels like he's just nonchalant sitting in the corner. And all this other stuff is happening. So there needs to be an explanation for that next week. He
yeah,
has to do something, I would think.
yeah. He
Yeah.
hasn't really been doing anything. It's like, he got all this information from Franklin. He went to Gustavo. but we haven't
Yep.
seen him do anything. Maybe he's just reading his magazines or something. I don't
That's
know,
yeah.
but
That's exactly. That's exactly. I guess that's what he is doing because again, last week Teddy broke into his place. No retaliation. Not even talking. Hey, somebody broke into my house. I think I know it's them. None of that. So there better be a reason for that. I would imagine next week, but we'll see what happens.
yeah, man, I can't wait. So another we are going to get to the trailer and talk about that a bit, but so this question, like, I think I'm mixing up my trailers because I know there's funeral scenes in the trailer, but there wasn't kind of any shootout at the funeral, right? I think I'm thinking of Power, maybe.
Yeah, you're thinking of ghosts.
Okay.
Definitely a shootout at that funeral.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess this last question is basically like, what do you expect to come from that funeral scene? Like, do you think anything major might happen there? Could anyone potentially show up there? Like Teddy likes to do this thing where he shows up to places like that, unannounced. So he might even, show up there and try and intimidate Franklin or something. Would you feel like might come from the funeral?
Well, that would be very interesting if something did happen at the funeral. Um, I'm not 100% sure. It feels as though they want to give a little bit of time to honor Jerome, which is fine. But right after that funeral is over, this is when the gloves come off, and this is where things get a lot more dangerous. Um, I don't know if Teddy would show up to the funeral because right now Teddy is concerned about the safety of his family. So obviously he is going to meet up with Julia again next week. And Parissa is also there as well when they meet up. So that should be a very interesting conversation, whatever that is that they have. But I kind of feel like at this point, I don't think anything is going to happen at the funeral per se. I will be surprised if there is a shootout at the funeral that happens towards the end. That'll be very interesting. But I think they're going to give that time to honor Jerome. But I do want to say this because I did notice this last night. I noticed that this was brought up in a couple of conversations, but it happened very quickly, so it might have missed people's. People might have missed it. When Scully came face to face with Leon, there was a bit of anger in his expression. Now, obviously, we know about the history between those two characters. We know that yes, that Leon he killed he actually he killed his daughter, and then eventually then we also saw what ended up happening later on when his wife was also taken out by Jerome. So when I saw that, obviously that was done after what happened in this episode, and everybody you saw what happened to Jerome. Everybody is reeling from that, but it's very interesting that Scully had that reaction to seeing him because that tells me that even though Scully is on a different path now, I don't really know how Jerome's death might impact him in this regard. If he may consider going back and getting revenge on Leon. I mean, I have no idea. But what I do know is that the story will not end well for Leon and Wanda. I can't tell you how it's going to end because I don't know how it's going to end, but I'm telling you right now, that's not going to end well. I think Wanda will get hooked on drugs again. Leon could still get killed as well. But the question is how. And again, Leon still has to worry about Dion. Dion is going to be at that funeral, so there may be. Hey, listen, there might be an interaction between those two characters for all we know. But he is going to be there because they showed in the photos that he is there, Scully is there, and of course other characters are there. So something might happen, maybe a conversation. I just don't know if it's going to get physical. But we'll have to wait and find out next week.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I do think it is very important to respect Jerome, respect the character and everything. So I do think there's going to be like a nice little tribute kind of scene, to the character, a nice send off. But I absolutely think something will come from the funeral also, like, even if it's like a hint towards something, like, I just feel like something dramatic is going to happen, whether it's Teddy showing up or Teddy he's outside watching or something like that. Maybe scoping out Sissy, seeing where she goes or something. Like something is going to come from it, and of course, there's probably likely going to be some sort of conversation between Louie and Franklin, maybe that comes from the funeral, and also, like you said, different characters interacting. So like Scully might be there, Leon will be there, Dion, all these different other characters are going to be there, and so there's going to be so much room for different interactions between these characters. So yeah, something crazy is going to pop off from the funeral, I believe. After they give the character his tribute. It's just like because it's at a very intense level at the moment. It's like very highly intense. I feel like and a funeral is it's a very vulnerable situation, and coming off of what Franklin did to Teddy's father, it's like, can Teddy really let an opportunity like that slip? Like he's going to be looking at every opportunity to bring the heat to Franklin. And of course, it's not really his style to shoot up the funeral or shoot up the streets or anything. That's not his style. But I do think that something is gonna, come from it, like whether he's trying to intimidate Franklin or, threaten to kill Sissy or something. Like something is gonna, come from it. And I don't think the gloves are off, so I don't think he's letting any situation slide at this point. Um, yeah, so I think something's gonna happen at the funeral for sure. But yeah, we'll wait and see. So let's get right to the trailer now. So, a well put together trailer as always. So we get the lines of Louis blaming Franklin for Jerome's death. We get everybody walking to the funeral suited up. You know, we get uh, we get Teddy's wife. She shows up and she's talking to him and she's telling him, just walk away from all of this. It's going to get worse. We see Sissy. She might be talking to Louis here, but she says no one is going away with clean hands. And there's the whole Franklin and Leon part where he's saying, he needs $500,000, and that's the price of freedom. And there might be, and I think they quickly glossed over the Gustavo moment that you spoke about also. So yeah, quite a lot happens there. We know that they're very good at putting these trailers together because the trailer for episode 6 was so well put together, and we it left us guessing what was going to happen, and we see what happened. So they do a great job editing these trailers. But Rich, what do you make of this trailer? And based on that, what do you think we can expect in the next episode?
That's a good question. Well, I definitely think that somehow Teddy and Franklin, they're going to try to do something to each other in the next episode. I don't know what that is. Like you said, it could be something whereas Teddy is surveillancing the funeral and he does attempt to try and take someone that either Franklin or someone he loves out. That could happen. We do know that he is still having to now deal with the situation of you have Parissa as well as your ex-wife, who they're also in that trailer, and they have a conversation. Obviously, if he does flee the country, I think his ex-wife might have an issue with that because they have a kid together. So there's a lot of stuff that has to get figured out as far as that situation is concerned. But the funeral, I think, is that trailer is very well done because they're making you believe this is mainly about the funeral next week. You do see that Louis has the line that she blames Franklin, and she is obviously talking to somebody when she's telling him, saying this. So the question is, who is she talking to? You don't see them. You see the shadow of the person. You don't see who she's talking to. That's why I said if she tells Teddy this information, I don't. That's the thing. I don't know, but I will say this because Louis is so desperate to still have power and still have Buckley. I think that she will be willing to do whatever she can to keep that going. That's why I said I definitely see her turning on Franklin and trying to basically help Teddy take him down. But we'll see how that goes, because we do know that when they were taking photos of basically when Gustavo was doing the deal with Louie, the DEA was also taking photos of Louie. So I kind of feel like they know who they need to go after in terms of the people, not just Gustavo. So we have to see how that all comes together. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be very emotional, like I said, for those that are very diehard Jerome fans. They're going to probably shed a few tears next week because of the funeral. But I agree with what you said 100%. They have to progress the storyline with Teddy and Franklin because Teddy hasn't yet gotten retaliation for his father getting killed. And also, Rueben hasn't gotten retaliation. You have Teddy breaking into your house last week, then now, no, then he comes to your door this week and threatens you. So there has to be something that happens, I feel, as far as those two conflicts are concerned. But we have to stay tuned and see what happens. And then the last point I will mention again, Dion will be at that funeral. Leon will be there as well. So I will be very curious to see how those characters are going to interact with each other because Dion clearly, I feel eventually he is going to try to get revenge on Leon. It's just a matter of when and what he actually does. And I think it has to do with Wanda because he knows how important Wanda is to Leon. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and so a question for you: Do
Yeah.
you think Gustavo might show up at the funeral?
Mm. That is a very good question. Um,
Just to
I'm not
show his
sure.
support,
I
like
I mean, yeah, Gustavo he is very very well aware of who Jerome was, so he might show up. You know, um, if he does show up, I'm pretty sure that Teddy will be watching very closely because Teddy obviously they are watching. They're watching with anything that they do, and that's why I say it was important when Franklin said to Sissy in this episode, yes, we can't. We have to watch what we're doing because we are being watched now. So, like you said, because this is a vulnerable position, it 100% makes sense for Teddy to take advantage in some way with this particular situation. But I don't know how he's going to do it. But yeah, Gustavo probably is going to be at that funeral also next week.
Yeah, because another scenario that could happen is, maybe he visits to pay his respects, but he also has a conversation with Franklin, to
Yep.
to plan things out for Teddy. It could be a short conversation or whatever in passing, but either two things can happen. Either Louis could see them or overhear them or something, and maybe
Yep.
like you said, she goes back and tells Teddy, or maybe Teddy's watching the funeral to see who's there, and then he sees the two characters talking,
Mm-hmm.
and I could see that being Gustavo's time running out right there. If he sees those two talking so comfortably to each other, he might think, yeah, I'm not even giving this the chance, for them to plan anything against me. I'm just going to take out Gustavo. You know?
Oh yeah, and they might have foreshadowed that either Gustavo or Ruben are going to get killed because Teddy does have that needle he did not use when he met Gustavo the last time. So that I'm
Oh
wondering
yeah.
now if he is going to get a chance to use that needle on somebody before the show is over. So
Oh yeah.
we'll see, or maybe it'll get used on him by Franklin. Who knows?
Yeah, man. This show is pretty amazing, the writing. So
I agree.
yeah, I can't wait for next week. Like, I was so highly anticipating this episode. Like I woke up early, watched it and everything. Like, yeah, this show is like giving me that feel again, like of being kind of addicted to a show, and trying to find out what's going to happen week to week. Like this is really giving me that feeling, and I haven't had that in a long time. So props to FX, John Singleton, all the talent involved, Damson Idris, Armin Joseph, great talents behind this show. This is definitely going to be remembered. I think it's going to be, when it finishes, it's going to be held up there with The Wire, as one of those shows. So
I agree.
yeah.
I agree 100%. Uh, doesn't mean that. the other shows we cover aren't good. Like I said, Power is good. It's been entertaining. This show is just on a different level, from the acting to the writing to all of that. So that's why I hope more people are watching it, or they do check it out at some point, because it is definitely uh, a show you should be watching, in my opinion.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. But yeah, so any more final thoughts before we end off? Like, any final thoughts, anything else you wanted to mention from the episode, or even any shout outs or anything?
Oh, well, no, I just want to give a shout out to everybody that has been supporting the shows. We love seeing comments. We love seeing people like on the videos. And yeah, I just love the interaction on these particular Snowfall videos. So if you definitely enjoyed this conversation, please do leave your comments. Let us know your thoughts on some of the things that we discussed. And of course, we will be responding to some of your comments. And yeah, if you do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And again, we've enjoyed covering Snowfall. There's only 4 episodes left after this one.
Wow.
So
Oh, wow.
yeah, only 4. And unlike another show, there is no break in between. This is a straight from the beginning to the end. So I appreciate that. But yeah, if you do enjoy the content, definitely leave your comments, consider subscribing, and looking forward to talking about the next episode next week.
Indeed. Man, it's all over in 4 weeks, man. That's crazy. Then we'll never get any snowfall ever again. That's gonna be hard to come to terms with. But yeah, we gotta give these people their flowers while we're here. We gotta enjoy it while it's here, because things move on. But hopefully there'll be more other great shows for us to look forward to in the future. But yeah, Snowfall is already up there in the clouds as one that we're gonna remember. But with that being said, rest in peace to Uncle Jerome. We are going to be out of here. We'll see you again next week. So until then, everybody take care of yourselves. And yeah, I can't wait to see the comments. Peace out. See you soon.
Peace.